Nigel Farage strode into the grand auditorium with the confidence of a man who believed he had set the perfect trap. The British populace had spent weeks preparing what he thought would be the ultimate gotcha moment against Jonathan Roumie, the American actor whose calm presence and moral clarity had earned him a global following. But what happened in the next 30 seconds would leave Farage speechless and turn him into a viral meme the internet would never forget. The hall was packed with reporters, cameras rolling, the air electric with tension. Every seat was filled with academics, journalists, and political insiders who had come expecting a routine debate on democracy and cultural values. But the buzz in the room suggested something much larger was about to unfold. Farage had his notes perfectly arranged, his talking points rehearsed, and his trademark smirk locked in place. He had practiced his questions in front of mirrors, drilled with his aides, and even rehearsed clever one-liners with his media team. He thought he was about to expose Roumie as just another Hollywood figure pretending to speak about faith and values. His political allies had been briefed on the plan, and some were already preparing follow-up attacks once Farage had weakened Roumie's position. He had no idea he was marching straight into his own public humiliation. Jonathan Roumie sat calmly at the other end of the table. His dark suit was simple, his expression serene, his eyes steady with quiet conviction. He knew exactly what Farage was planning. He'd seen this type before. Politicians who thrived on spectacle, who believed that anger and performance could substitute for substance. Roumie wasn't timid and intimidated. Years of portraying profound truths on screen and speaking to audiences about faith had taught him how to read people, how to spot arrogance disguised as confidence, and how to stay composed when others tried to rattle on him. While Farage had been rehearsing barbs, Roumie had been reflecting, preparing not with tricks or traps, but with clarity and purpose. And Roumie had something Farage didn't expect: the receipts, the grounding in truth, and the calm authority that came from a lifetime of discipline and conviction. Before we dive into this remarkable showdown, hit that like button if you're ready to see Nigel Farage get absolutely dismantled. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss these epic moments where arrogance meets reality and loses. The moderator called the session to order. Cameras zoomed in on Farage as he adjusted his suit and cleared his throat. He looked straight at Roumie with the kind of confidence that comes from years of privilege and the belief that he could talk his way out of anything. The stage was set for what Farage thought would be his triumph. But Roumie wasn't just any guest. He was a man who had spent years embodying integrity and authenticity in front of millions. He wasn't there to play games. He was there to speak the truth. And that made him the nightmare of every politician who relied on theatrics instead of facts. Farage leaned forward, his voice dripping with false concern as he began his carefully planned attack. His communications director sat in the gallery, phone ready to capture what they all believed would be the defining moment of Farage's comeback. Donors and party insiders had even tuned in live, eager to see their champion humiliate the actor turned advocate. But the irony was thick. While Farage thought he was preparing for victory, he was in fact walking straight into his most public defeat. In just minutes, Jonathan Roumie would deliver a single sentence that would not only shatter Farage's performance, but also make him the laughingstock of social media for weeks to come. Jonathan Roumie's background could not have been more different from Nigel Farage's world of political theater. Roumie had grown up in a working-class family in New York, working his way through school and into a career where he became known not for ambition or power games, but for embodying integrity and faith on screen. He knew what it was like to face people who believed they were smarter, more powerful, and more entitled to win. Years of navigating Hollywood while staying true to his values had sharpened his instincts. He had faced casting directors who doubted his choices, executives who pressured him to compromise his beliefs, in a culture often hostile to the kind of stories he wanted to tell. Each challenge had made him steadier, teaching him to think quickly, to read people's intentions, and never to let arrogance intimidate him. He had learned that the key to victory wasn't just having the truth, it was knowing exactly when and how to reveal it. On set, in interviews, and in public debates, Roumie had mastered the art of staying calm while others worked themselves into a frenzy, letting his quiet conviction dismantle their noise. Now, in this high-profile forum on democracy and values, Roumie brought that same steadiness with him. He wasn't there to play politics or to put on a show. He was there to call out hypocrisy and defend what was right. What made Roumie particularly dangerous to opponents like Farage was not aggression, but composure. He had mastered the subtle art of letting his challengers believe they were winning, right up until the moment he revealed their fatal error. Observers had learned to watch for the signs, the way his eyes narrowed ever so slightly when he spotted an opening, the pause in his words when he was about to deliver a decisive blow, and the calm smile that appeared just before he turned an opponent's arguments back on themselves. This wasn't just another panel or policy discussion. The topic was immigration and human dignity, one of the most polarizing issues in modern politics. Farage and his allies had framed immigration as chaos, loss of control, and a threat to national identity. Roumie, by contrast, had spoken out about compassion, faith, and the inherent dignity of every human being. But beyond the policy itself, the confrontation represented something deeper about the times. Whether politics would continue to be dominated by loud, theatrical figures like Farage, or whether voices of calm truth like Roumie could reclaim the stage. For Farage, this was supposed to be his moment. He had been hyping it for weeks on social media, promising his followers that he would expose Roumie as naive, out of touch, and hypocritical. His staff had prepared elaborate charts, talking points, and sound bites. His communications team was ready to clip the exchange and blast it online as proof of his rhetorical dominance. For Roumie, this wasn't about performance. It was about dignity, respect, and truth. He was tired of seeing debates reduced to shouting matches and character assassinations. He was tired of watching people like Farage turn matters of human lives into fodder for viral content. The stage was set for a clash between two entirely different approaches: Farage's calculated theater versus Roumie's authentic conviction. Farage began his questioning with the kind of false humility that experienced debaters recognize instantly. He adjusted his cuffs, cleared his throat with theatrical precision, and leaned forward with what he clearly believed was his most authoritative posture. He thanked Roumie for his time, complimented him with words dripping in condescension, and then launched into what he thought was a masterful setup designed to corner Roumie into an impossible position. "Mr. Roumie," Farage began, his voice smooth and confident, each word delivered like a barrister before a jury. "You've spoken passionately about compassion and human dignity. Is it fair to say you believe nations should treat all people with respect, regardless of their origin?" Roumie nodded calmly, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. He could sense the trap forming, but he was curious to see exactly where Farage thought he was going. "And you would say," Farage continued, "that borders, while necessary, should never be used as tools to demean or dehumanize those who seek a better life. Is that correct?" "That's correct," Roumie replied simply, giving him no extra rope to work with. Farage's smirk widened. He thought he was laying the perfect foundation for his attack. His staff had combed through Roumie's past statements, looking for any hint of contradiction that they could twist into hypocrisy. "That's admirable," Farage said, his tone tightening. "So then, surely you would oppose any measures that might, say, limit the number of migrants allowed entry into a country, even if such measures were designed to protect national stability?" Roumie leaned forward slightly, recognizing the leading nature of the question. "I oppose measures that strip people of dignity, yes. But I support laws that protect both citizens and migrants, as long as they do not sacrifice compassion in the name of fear." Farage's grin widened further. He believed he had his target cornered. With a dramatic flourish, he picked up a folder from the table, opening it as if he was about to unveil a devastating piece of evidence. "Mr. Roumie," he said, his tone turning prosecutorial, "I'd like to ask you about something specific from one of your past interviews. Perhaps you'd care to explain?" The hall grew quieter as reporters leaned forward, sensing this was the moment Nigel Farage had been building toward. His allies in the audience looked pleased, clearly expecting him to spring some devastating revelation. "In 2020, Farage declared, consulting his notes with theatrical precision, you gave an interview where you openly endorsed removing limits on immigration numbers into Europe. How do you reconcile that with your current claim that you support border integrity?" There was a pause as Farage sat back, chest puffed out with pride at what he thought was a masterful trap. His aides in the gallery nodded approvingly, phones raised to capture what they were sure would be Jonathan Roumie's stumbling response. Even some neutral observers in the audience held their breath, wondering if Farage had uncovered a contradiction. But Roumie didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as though trying to make sense of what Farage had just said. "Mr. Farage," he said slowly, his voice calm but carrying a razor edge of clarity, "are you referring to my 2020 interview with Faith and Society magazine?" Farage shuffled his papers, suddenly a touch less confident. Yes, that's the one." Roumie leaned back in his chair and for the first time since the exchange began, allowed himself a small smile. Not a friendly smile, but the quiet, knowing smile of someone who had just realized his opponent had walked straight into a trap of his own making. "I think you may want to revisit your research," Roumie said, his tone patient but cutting. Farage frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well," Roumie continued, speaking slowly and clearly as though explaining something to a child, "in that interview, I didn't endorse unlimited immigration. I spoke against dehumanizing rhetoric. I said, and I quote, that policies must protect borders, but they must never strip people of their dignity. That's not what you claimed, and you know it." The color began to drain from Farage's face as he rifled through his notes. His staff in the gallery shifted uncomfortably, whispering urgently among themselves. "Furthermore," Roumie went on, his voice gaining strength, "that same interview specifically emphasized that laws need to be fair to citizens and newcomers alike. You've twisted my words into something they never were. And that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Turning real human suffering into sound bites for political theater." Farage tried to recover, his voice faltering. "Well, Mr. Roumie, regardless of the specific phrasing, the point remains that you have often—" "No," Roumie cut in sharply, his patience at an end. "The point is that you came here today armed with distortions, hoping for a viral clip, and you didn't even bother to get the basic facts straight. That, sir, is what's wrong with public discourse today." The hall fell into a stunned silence. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Even Farage's allies looked uneasy, realizing he had walked into a disaster of his own making. Some winced, others checked their phones, watching the damage spread online in real time. Farage raised his folder weakly. I have the transcript right here." "Your transcript is wrong," Roumie said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "And this is exactly the kind of dishonesty that prevents us from having serious conversations about real human lives." Desperate, Farage tried to pivot. His voice, once smooth, now trembled with frustration. "Mr. Roumie, surely we can at least agree that national integrity matters." Roumie leaned forward, locking eyes with him, his voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Mr. Farage, the only thing you've proven here today is that you're more interested in viral clips than honest conversation. And frankly," he paused, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air, "you're not even good at that." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, the entire hall seemed frozen in time. Farage sat stunned, his mouth slightly open, his carefully orchestrated plan collapsing around him. His notes looked useless. His smirk was gone. His credibility evaporated. Roumie sat back, calm and composed, the satisfaction of a man who had just delivered a knockout blow radiating from him. The audience knew instantly they had just witnessed the defining moment of the night. The damage was done, and everyone in the hall knew it. The moderator, sensing that things had gone completely off the rails, tried to intervene. "Perhaps we should move on to the next question." But Jonathan Roumie wasn't finished. He had spent his entire career dealing with people who thought arrogance and spectacle could substitute for truth, and he was determined to make this a teaching moment. "Mr. Farage," Roumie continued, his voice steady and professional, "you came here today with what you thought was a clever trap. You had your notes, your talking points, your media team ready to clip whatever moment you thought you were going to create. But you forgot the most basic part of your job, getting your facts straight." Roumie calmly pulled out his own folder, moving with the deliberate precision of someone who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. His gestures were calculated and confident, the body language of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. "Since you've brought up my record," Roumie said, his voice carrying the authority of someone grounded in truth, "let me give you the accurate version. I've spoken consistently about compassion and responsibility. I've emphasized the dignity of every person, regardless of where they come from. I've worked with organizations that support refugees, families, and the elderly. And while I was doing that," he paused dramatically, letting the room hang on his words. "Oh, that's right. You were in Parliament championing policies that tore communities apart, policies that dehumanized rather than uplifted." Farage tried to interrupt, his voice cracking with forced indignation. "That's not a fair characterization." "Is it not?" Roumie asked, arching an eyebrow. "Because I have your voting record right here if you'd like me to go through it." The gallery, which had been hushed moments earlier, now buzzed with energy. Reporters typed furiously, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Farage's staffers shifted in their seats, some already planning their escape routes. Even Farage's political allies were shaking their heads. clearly frustrated that their champion had walked into such a disaster. And outside the hall, social media was already exploding. Someone in the gallery had live tweeted Roumie's devastating one-liner, and it spread across the internet at lightning speed. Get Roumie destroys. Farage began trending within minutes. Desperately trying to salvage something, Farage attempted to return to his talking points. The British people deserve to know their borders are secure. The British people deserve leaders who check their facts before they open their mouths. Roumie replied instantly. Farage tried again, louder now, his confidence replaced by frustration. We're talking about the very integrity of the nation. We're talking, Roumie shot back, his voice cutting like a blade, about your fundamental failure to prepare for this debate. Each exchange made Farage look smaller, more flustered. His allies were wincing openly. Some were already glued to their phones, watching the disaster unfold online in real time. In a last-ditch attempt at dignity, Farage snapped, "Mr. Roumie, I don't appreciate your tone." Roumie's response was swift and final. "And I don't appreciate politicians who waste people's time with theater based on falsehoods." Yet, here we are. The moderator finally stepped in, clearly recognizing this had become a complete debacle for Farage's side. We should move on, but it was too late. The damage was irreversible. Nigel Farage had walked into that hall expecting to humiliate Jonathan Roumie, and instead, Roumie had systematically dismantled his credibility, his preparation, and his reputation in front of a global audience. As the debate moved on, phones across the world buzzed with notifications. The clip of Roumie's devastating one-liner spread like wildfire, faster than anything political that week. The only thing you've proven today is that you care more about viral clips than honest conversation. And frankly, you're not even good at that. Those words were replayed on news shows, turned into memes, remixed into viral videos, and embraced as a rallying cry for everyone who was tired of political grandstanding and empty theatrics. The phrase, "you're not even good at that," became an instant internet sensation. People used it across social media to mock every failed attempt at cleverness or manipulation. Farage had gotten his viral moment, just not in the way he planned, and certainly not in a way that would help him moving forward. Within 30 minutes, #Roumie destroys Farage was the #1 trending topic worldwide. The video clip passed 100,000 views in the first hour, with thousands of shares, comments, and reactions flooding in every minute. Creators were already remixing the line into songs, ringtones, and memes that would dominate the internet for days, and the responses were swift and brutal. "Farage just got schooled by Jonathan Roumie, and it was glorious," wrote one commentator. "This is what happens when you come for someone without doing your homework. Absolute masterclass." Supporters of Roumie celebrated online, unleashing a flood of creativity, memes, clips, and edits, each one sharper than the last. One popular meme showed a split screen. Farage at the start of the debate, confident and smirking, contrasted with his defeated expression at the end. The caption read, "How it started versus how it ended, political edition." Another meme showed Jonathan Roumie with the text, "When someone thinks they're playing chess, but you're the grandmaster and they don't even know the rules." A particularly viral TikTok edit paired the exchange with dramatic orchestral music. Roumie's devastating response shown in slow motion, his calm words landing like a knockout blow. Activists and faith-based organizations quickly seized on the moment as a proof of everything wrong with Farage's brand of political theater. "This is exactly why we need more voices like Jonathan Roumie in public discourse," tweeted a major civil society group. "He doesn't play games. He speaks truth and calls out bad faith when he sees it." Behind the scenes, Farage's allies were in panic mode. Sources close to his party leadership reported emergency phone calls and frantic strategy meetings on how to contain the public relations disaster. Senior strategists were furious that one of their most recognizable figures had managed to hand Roumie a perfect viral moment on a global stage. Conservative media outlets were left in the awkward position of trying to defend the indefensible. Some hosts attempted to spin the exchange as typical left-wing hostility, but even their own commenters weren't buying it. Comment sections were brutal, filled with longtime supporters expressing disappointment and anger. "Nigel walked right into that one," wrote one conservative user. "He should have been prepared. This is embarrassing for all of us." Farage's own social media team scrambled into damage control ammo, but their efforts only made things worse. They posted a statement claiming he had been making important points about national security, but the replies were merciless. "Maybe next time check your facts before trying to ambush someone," was one of the kinder responses. Colleagues began distancing themselves from Farage almost immediately. Reporters pressing for comments were met with silence or carefully worded evasions. One ally, speaking anonymously, admitted, "That was humiliating for all of us. He made us look unprepared and unprofessional." Political analysts across the spectrum were quick to weigh in, many calling it one of the most spectacular debate meltdowns in recent memory. A former parliamentary staffer with decades of experience told reporters, "I've seen a lot of debates go badly, but this was a masterclass in how not to confront an opponent." Farage clearly didn't do his homework, and Roumie made him pay for it in the most public way possible. Experts in rhetoric praised Roumie's composure and sharp handling of the situation. One legal scholar noted, "It was textbook. He let Farage build his case, spotted the weaknesses, and then dismantled it piece by piece. It was beautiful advocacy, the kind you usually only see in courtrooms, translated onto the political stage." Media critics observed how the exchange underscored a deeper problem: the rise of politics as performance rather than substance. "This is what happens when leaders prioritize viral moments over genuine governance," one prominent journalist wrote. Farage thought he was playing for the cameras. Roumie was speaking for the truth, and the difference was obvious. For Jonathan Roumie, the moment was a breakthrough. While already admired by fans for his acting and his outspoken values, this exchange introduced him to a far wider audience. Commentators who had never paid him much attention before now called him a force to be reckoned with, predicting that his influence in cultural and political conversations would only grow. Donations poured into charities and organizations Roumie supported. Messages flooded in from supporters around the world, small dollar donors, community leaders, and activists who thanked him for standing up to political bullying. Invitations rolled in for interviews, podcasts, and public speaking events. Most importantly, the viral moment cemented Roumie's reputation as someone who could not be intimidated or rattled. Other would-be challengers would now think twice before trying to trap him with twisted words or cheap theatrics. The Roumie-Farage exchange quickly became symbolic of larger global tensions. For Roumie's supporters, it represented the kind of grounded moral clarity they wanted to see in public debate. For Farage's side, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of relying on spectacle without substance. And across both sides of the spectrum, leaders took note of how swiftly and decisively the exchange spiraled into a public relations nightmare for the wrong person. Progressive leaders saw an opportunity to elevate Jonathan Roumie, showcasing him in more visible positions as a voice of reason and integrity. Meanwhile, Farage's allies began having quiet, uncomfortable conversations about the need for better preparation and coordination before any future high-profile appearances. The moment also highlighted the shifting dynamics of political communication in the social media age. Farage had planned his attack with traditional news coverage in mind, but Roumie's calm, devastating one-liner was perfectly designed for the viral video era. Concise, quotable, and powerful, it spread across platforms at lightning speed. In the weeks following the debate, Nigel Farage found himself grappling with consequences that went far beyond a single bad day. His fundraising collapsed as donors began to doubt his competence. Some who had once viewed him as a safe investment quickly redirected their contributions to figures they considered more reliable. His media invitations dwindled. When he did appear on television, hosts were less indulgent, more skeptical, and far less willing to hand him easy talking points. The image of a confident Farage had been replaced by one of a man exposed under pressure. Most damaging of all, colleagues who had once treated him as a rising star began to see him as a liability. For Jonathan Roumie, the opposite occurred. He was invited to more panels, entrusted with greater opportunities, and celebrated for his poise under fire. His colleagues, activists, and supporters recognized that he could be trusted in high-pressure situations, someone who spoke with both clarity and authenticity. The Roumie-Farage exchange soon became required viewing in political science classes and media training programs across Europe and the United States. Universities incorporated the video into their curricula as a case study in communication strategy, the importance of preparation, and the dangers of underestimating your opponent. Veterans of political campaigns began using it as shorthand. "Do we want another Farage moment?" became the warning whispered in strategy meetings whenever someone suggested a risky ambush. The lesson was simple but profound. In an era of political theater and manufactured outrage, authentic expertise and genuine preparation still matter. Roumie's victory hadn't come from flashy tricks or aggressive posturing. It came from knowing his subject, understanding his opponent's weaknesses, and calmly letting the facts speak louder than theatrics. Months later, the Roumie-Farage exchange still resonated across political circles and beyond. Roumie's words had become a template for effective communication in the modern age. Stay calm, stay factual, and let arrogance defeat itself. Nigel Farage, meanwhile, never fully recovered. He continued in politics, but the luster of inevitability was gone. His influence faded, his media presence diminished, and his credibility was forever scarred. The story of how Jonathan Roumie dismantled Nigel Farage with a single sentence became legendary, a reminder that in public life, as in real life, preparation beats grandstanding every single time. And if you enjoyed watching this moment of political karma in action, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these powerful showdowns where the arrogant get humbled and the truth prevails. Because the stage will always have its characters like Nigel Farage who think they're the smartest person in the room. But there will also be heroes like Jonathan Roumie, calm, steady, and ready to put them in their place. Stay tuned.